In 1393, a priest was tortured for days and then thrown off a bridge into a black river in the middle of the night. His body floated downstream. And on both banks, witnesses, multiple, independent. Something appeared above the water where he drowned. 5 lights, burning in the dark above the body of a dead man. Just hovering there. Those 5 lights are on every statue, every painting, every relief carving of him that exists. They became his symbol, his halo. Because nobody who saw them could explain them, and nobody who heard the story could forget them. That priest is the most touched object in Prague today. Millions of hands. His bronze cross worn gold by the pressure of human hope pressed against it in the dark. He is not the strangest thing in this city. He is barely the beginning. This is Prague. And Prague is not haunted by accident. Before we get to the ghosts, you need to understand something about the ground you're standing on. It is 1348. The Black Death has arrived in Prague. A street that was full of merchants and children 3 weeks ago is silent now. There is a body in the doorway of the baker's shop. There has been a body there for 4 days. There is no one left to move it. The city's gravediggers have formed gangs. Because there is so much work that it has become a power business. That is what Prague smells like in 1348. That is what Prague sounds like. That is what it is. And then the plague comes back. 6 major outbreaks over 2 centuries. Prague had barely stopped burying its dead from one wave before the next arrived. The Romans had a term for places like this, loci terribiles, terrible places. Places where so much suffering had soaked into the earth that the earth itself became corrupted. Most cities collect history. Prague collected catastrophe. Plague, war, torture, mass executions, religious purges, occupations that lasted decades. And all of it, every single drop of blood, every scream, every body, happened in the same square mile of cobblestone streets that tourists walk today with their cameras and their coffee. In 1618, a war started here that would kill 8 million people across Europe. It started with 3 men being thrown out of a castle window 70 feet above the ground. They survived. Catholics said it was a miracle. Protestants said it was the dung heap they landed in, but the war it started turned Prague into a city of widows. And in the middle of all of it, the plague, the war, the executions in the main square, Prague's leaders built torture chambers. Not hidden. Not secret, official, legal, with notaries, with ink, with paperwork. Because in medieval Europe, torture was not cruelty. It was procedure. And what came out of those chambers, what people said, what people saw, what the notaries wrote down and signed, is where our story really begins. Under the streets of Prague's old town, there are rooms that haven't changed in 500 years. Stone floors. Iron rings in the walls. Instruments that were designed, carefully, thoughtfully by craftsmen, to extract confession from the human body. And because medieval torture was a legal proceeding, there are records. Names, dates, and testimonies. You can read them. Some of them you will wish you hadn't. In 1680, the same year a catastrophic plague was tearing through the city, a woman was brought to one of these chambers. Her name was Dorota, a washerwoman. She lived in the Malastrana district, the small town beneath the castle hill. Her neighbors had accused her of witchcraft. The specific accusation, she had been seen speaking to a figure at the city gates after midnight. A man, they said, or the shape of a man. He wore no shoes. He left no footprints in the snow. Dorota was brought in, questioned. She denied everything. The session proceeded to physical torture. The notary, a man whose job it was to stay calm, stay clinical, record everything, was writing. Dorota was screaming. And then she stopped. Not because it was over. Not because she had confessed. She just stopped mid-session. The notary recorded it. She became completely still, completely calm, and she looked past the interrogators. At the wall behind them. And she said, in a conversational voice as if commenting on the weather, "He is standing behind you right now." The notary's next entry is in different handwriting. Shakier. It reads, "Session suspended. Witness reported extreme cold. Candles extinguished without cause." 3 days later, Dorota was released. No confession obtained. No explanation recorded. After that entry, nothing. She does not appear in any other Prague document. No marriage record. No death record. No tax record. No trace. She walked out of that chamber and disappeared from history entirely. The rational mind says, she was a traumatized woman using psychological tactics. She said what she needed to say to stop what was happening to her. The candles went out because of a draft. The cold was winter. Maybe. But here is the thing about those chambers that guides, historians, and confirmed skeptics consistently report. People go quiet in them. Not respectful quiet. Not tourist quiet. Something else. The specific kind of quiet where you find yourself not wanting to look at the corners of the room. Where you move slightly closer to whoever you came in with without realizing you did it. Every single tour guide who takes people down those steps says the same thing. Without exception. The chambers are still there. The iron rings are still in the walls. And whatever made Dorota stop screaming and look at the wall behind her tormentors, whatever she saw standing there, no one has been able to explain it for 340 years. Every hour in Prague's Old Town Square, tourists gather to watch a clock perform. Wooden apostles parade across a window. A rooster crows. And a skeleton, carved in black, holding a bell, rings the hour with one bony hand while the other holds an hourglass, watching you. That skeleton is not decoration. It was put there on purpose. As a warning. Because the people who built this clock knew something about it that they needed to pass down. And the only way to pass it down was to carve it into the machine itself, where no one could miss it. The Prague Astronomical Clock was completed in 1410. One of the oldest functioning astronomical clocks on Earth. It tracks the sun, the moon, the zodiac. It tells you the time in 3 different systems simultaneously. For the 15th century, it was so far beyond what should have been technically possible that most people who saw it assumed no human being had made it alone. The master clockmaker was a man named Hanuš. And when the clock was finished, when the city councillors of Prague stood in the square and understood what they had, they made a decision. They blinded him. They put out his eyes so he could never build another clock like it. So no rival city could have one. So Prague would remain unique. They took everything from the man who gave them their greatest treasure, and they destroyed the tool he used to create it. Hanuš, blind, betrayed, finished, asked to be brought to the clock one final time. His apprentice led him up. He found the mechanism by touch. And he reached into the gears with his bare hands. The clock stopped. Hanuš died. And for the next 100 years, every person who attempted to repair it either died during the attempt, went mad, or vanished before completing the work. The records of failed repairs fill pages. In 1787, a Viennese clockmaker named Josef Nürnberger was brought in. He was the most respected horologist in the Habsburg Empire. He had restored clocks in 6 capital cities. He arrived in Prague in April. He examined the mechanism. He wrote to his wife that the gears were unlike anything he had encountered, not in their construction, he wrote, but in the way they resist being understood. He was found dead in the clock tower on the morning of his 3rd day of work. No marks on the body. No apparent cause. His tools were laid out beside him in perfect order, as if he had arranged them carefully before lying down. The repair was never completed. A different clockmaker was brought in 6 months later. He finished the job. He never spoke publicly about what he found when he resumed Nürnberger's work. When asked, he would change the subject. His family reported that he never wore a watch again for the rest of his life. Historians debate the Hanuš legend. We don't have airtight documentary proof that he was blinded, and records from the 1400s are incomplete. The legend may have evolved, may have been embellished. But Nürnberger's death is documented. The pattern of failed repairs is documented. And then there is 1945. As World War II ended and Nazi forces retreated from Prague, German soldiers set fire to the old town hall. The clock tower burned. The wooden apostles were destroyed. The mechanism was wrecked beyond function. For months, the clock stood silent and broken. And in those months, multiple contemporary accounts, multiple independent witnesses, people in the square reported the same things. Figures appearing and vanishing. Cold spots in summer heat. The sound of clockwork in the middle of the night, clear and precise, with no source anyone could find. The clock was restored. The sound stopped. The skeleton still rings his bell every hour. He has been ringing it since 1410. And every time he does, he is looking directly at you. In the northeast corner of Prague, there is a cemetery where 100,000 people are buried in a space the size of a city block. Not 100,000 graves. 100,000 bodies. Stacked 12 layers deep because the community that buried them had no room to expand. For 300 years, the Jewish quarter, Josefov, was hemmed in by walls and laws and hostility. When its people died, they were placed on top of the people who died before them. The headstones were pushed up by the pressure of the layers beneath, tilting at angles like a field of broken teeth. Walk through this cemetery and understand, you are walking on top of 100,000 people. And those people were placed there because the city around them spent centuries making clear they were not welcome anywhere else. This is the context. This is the soil that produced the most famous monster in European folklore. Not born from superstition. Not born from fear of the unknown. Born from the very specific, very rational fear of a community that had survived everything the world threw at them, and understood clearly, practically, that they might need a protector the world could not stop. In the 1580s, Prague's Jewish community was led by a rabbi named Judah Loew ben Bezalel, the Maharal, a scholar so formidable that the Holy Roman Emperor, Rudolph II, the most powerful man in Europe, requested private meetings with him. Not the other way around. The emperor came to the rabbi. According to the legend, documented in community records going back to the 1600s, told in consistent detail across centuries, Rabbi Loew took clay from the banks of the Vltava River. He shaped it into the form of a man. He inscribed on its forehead the Hebrew word emet, truth. And the golem walked. It was a guardian. During the day it rested in the attic of the Old-New Synagogue, the oldest active synagogue in Europe, still standing, still used right now today. At night it walked the streets of the ghetto, protecting the community from the violence that swept through Jewish neighborhoods across Europe with terrifying regularity. Every Friday at sundown, the start of the Sabbath, Rabbi Loew would remove the Shem, a parchment of sacred text, from the golem's mouth. Without it, the creature was inert clay. On the Sabbath, even the guardian rested. But one Friday evening the rabbi forgot. He was distracted. Some versions say deep in prayer. Some say overwhelmed with exhaustion. Some simply say human, because every catastrophe in history has a human error at its center. The golem was not deactivated. And without the Shem directing it, without purpose, the creature that had been created to protect began to destroy. It turned on the ghetto. The thing built to be a shield became a weapon. Rabbi Loew ran. He found the golem. He tore the Shem from its mouth and spoke the word of unmaking, erasing the first letter of emet, turning truth into met, death. The golem collapsed, became clay again. And the rabbi carried its remains to the attic of the Old-New Synagogue, where, according to unbroken tradition across 400 years, they remain today. The attic has never been excavated. It is not open to visitors. Requests from researchers have been declined. In 1883, workers repairing the synagogue roof were given access to the attic. All of them, every single worker, refused to enter after looking through the door. They finished the repairs working around it. None of them would explain why. The records say simply that they looked through the door and they would not go in. The clay is still up there. The attic is still sealed. The Old-New Synagogue still holds its services every week, directly below whatever is resting in the dark above the congregation. The golem has never had just one lesson in it. It has two. The first, that a protector with no direction becomes a destroyer. The second, the one nobody talks about, is that Rabbi Loew created it from the river, from the earth. And if he could make it once, the earth remembers how. There is a bridge in Prague that has 30 statues standing on it. Baroque saints, placed between 1683 and 1714, watching every person who crosses. Their eyes follow you. Their hands reach toward you. At night, in the fog, and Prague is a city that knows fog, the Vltava River generates it in vast, theatrical quantities. These figures look less like stone and more like something waiting for permission to step off their pedestals. The Charles Bridge has stood since 1357. Before that, there was a bridge in the same spot, destroyed by floods. And before that, a ford in the river where people crossed for centuries before Prague was Prague. This crossing is older than the city around it. And it has absorbed more of what the city has experienced than any single other location. During the 30 Years' War, the heads of Protestant leaders executed in the old town square were displayed on pikes on this bridge. 27 heads. Left there for years. A message to anyone crossing. But the most specific haunting attached to this bridge is older than that. And it is attached to the one statue that tourists reach out to touch as they pass. The one with the 5 gold stars around its head, the bronze relief worn smooth and bright by millions of hands over centuries. His name was John of Nepomuk, the confessor to Queen Sophia, wife of King Wenceslas IV. In 1393 the king became convinced his wife was having an affair. He summoned John and made a demand: break the seal of confession. Tell me what my wife said to you in private. In Catholic doctrine, the seal of confession is absolute, unbreakable. A priest does not reveal what is said in confession under any circumstances. Not for a king. Not for torture. Not for death. John refused. Wenceslas had him tortured for days. He still refused. So the king had him brought to this bridge and thrown from the railing into the Vltava River 40 feet below. He drowned. And that night, the night of March 20, 1393, Witnesses on both banks of the river reported seeing a corona of 5 stars hovering above the water where his body floated. 5 stars. Burning in the dark above a dead priest in a freezing river. Those 5 stars are on every depiction of John of Nepomuk in existence. On his halo. On his statue. On the bronze relief that millions of people have touched on this bridge, wearing it gold with the weight of their hands. Touch it and your wish comes true. Touch it and you will return to Prague. This is the deal that millions of people have made with a murdered priest above a black river. In the dark. Whispering. What the bridge collects is something harder to categorize than the clock's documented deaths or the chamber's archived notary reports. People who cross it alone at night, in winter, in fog, around 3 or 4 in the morning when the city is genuinely empty, report the same experience with remarkable consistency. The feeling that the statues are watching you specifically. That the stone eyes are tracking your movement. That if you stop in the middle of the bridge and stand still long enough, you will hear something from the water below. Not the river. Not a boat. Something that sounds, several accounts agree, almost like a voice. Whether that is John of Nepomuk or something older, something the river carried long before he was thrown into it, no one has been able to determine. Prague has centuries of documented, notarized, witnessed, officially recorded encounters with things that should not exist. Not folklore passed down around fires. Not legend embellished across generations. Court records. Notary documents. Contemporary witness accounts from credible observers, clergy, emperors, soldiers, scholars, who reported the same things independently across decades, across centuries without the ability to coordinate their stories. Something in Prague does not follow the rules that apply everywhere else. The torture chambers produce experiences that trained guides cannot explain. The clock's history of death did not stop when rationalism arrived. The Golem's attic has stayed sealed not because of superstition, but because everyone who has looked through the door has decided, quietly without drama, that they would rather not go in. And on the bridge, a murdered saint has been collecting wishes from the living for 300 years, his cross worn gold by the weight of human hope pressed against it in the dark. Prague is not haunted by accident. It is haunted because it has earned it. Because a city that has absorbed that much death, that much resistance, that much refusal to be destroyed, leaves a mark on the world that does not fade just because the centuries keep moving. The dead of Prague are not quiet. They never have been. And they are waiting right now, in stone chambers and sealed attics and black river water, for the next person to cross their bridge and stop long enough to listen. This is Dread Stories TV. Follow for more places where the dead refuse to die.